All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us again this week. This week, we're going to talk about enhancing crew efficiency, and we're going to talk a lot about why sharing estimates and actual hours makes a difference. This week, I've got Jason Drews with me. He's back at the office in Markham. He's our VP of Customer Experience. He is an absolute rock star, been with the company an incredibly long time, knows the industry inside and out, and helps landscapers unlock their true potential every day. So going to rely on Jason for some good insights from the thousands of customers that he is responsible for keeping happy. I'm down at the 2024 Grow Group annual event, the Grow Conference in Des Moines, Iowa. Having an absolute incredible time here. Lots of contractors here. I think there's 850 people this year at the Grow Conference, touring RJ Landscape and learning from many, many different speakers here. So go ahead and throw your location up in the chat. Always love hearing from everybody there. And throw your questions in there as we go. We're going to keep an eye on those questions and try to touch on those as we go. And if we miss a few, we'll circle back and get those at the end. But again, thanks for joining. Jason and I will kick off here and move along.
Hey, everyone. All right. So I think we'd like to start off and ask a question here and just find out from everyone that's in attendance, just how do you currently share estimated versus actual hours? So are you currently doing it? And how often are you sharing that with your crews? Just feel free to throw it in the chat there. We'd love to see some responses while we're getting things kicked off here.
All right, seeing lots of weeklies for sure. Dailies, love the dailies. That's always good. Good. All right, getting some engagement there. Throw in your answer. Are you actually sharing estimated versus actual hours in advance, in real time, at the end of the month? And let us know how you're doing that. All right.
Good mix in the chat there.
So the little quote here on the bottom, this is one of my favorites. Those of you who have been around me, this tends to show up in many, many of my presentations, and for good reason. I love this quote: "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." I think, estimated versus actual hours allow people to even begin to create a plan. You can imagine what it would be like if somebody asks you to go do a job. Just put yourself in the shoes of a crew leader. The boss is coming out and saying, "Hey, go get this job done." And you really don't know what success looks like unless they tell you how long it should take. That's kind of the foundational piece of information. And I think jobs get really stressful when people don't understand whether they're winning or losing. And I think this quote, "Give me 6 hours," when you know that you've got 6 hours, then you can afford to take the time to do the right thing first and actually set yourself up for success to get it done within 6 hours. And, ultimately, I think all too often when we don't share hours, people make bad assumptions. They either think they have more time or less time, but in any case, I don't think they ever create a really meaningful plan to deliver on a really clear result because nobody told them what that would or should look like. And so I think that's what we're going to talk about over the next few hours. Hopefully we've got lots of great question, not hours. What am I saying? The next few 45 minutes.
Well, I'll keep us on time.
I've been talking way too much lately doing presentations. I did one this morning and I'm doing another this afternoon. I think I've lost track of my conversation. So my apologies for that. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to talk about this, and we'll try to make it clear why this is so important and what impact it has on the business. That's as far as we're going to get today, but I really, truly hope that this creates some action, because ultimately, if you're going to take time to join us, I want to make sure some action happens behind it all.
Those are some great points, Mark. And I think, from what I hear too, it's just impossible to hit a target when your team doesn't know what those targets are ultimately, right? So I really love the point about knowing that you've got those 4 hours to sharpen the axe.
Yeah, absolutely. So, ultimately, the best leaders, whether it's in sports, in school, in business, the best leaders always know how to unlock the true potential of the team. The winning coach of the Super Bowl or the Stanley Cup, they've found out exactly how to unlock that potential. And I think the only way to do that is to be able to kind of look deeply into the results and know what it is that you need to focus on fixing or changing in order to improve the results. And so I just want to kind of start by saying, like, estimated versus actual hours, this is just a continuous improvement mechanism. This is so that you can get better. It's not meant to ever be used in a negative way. It should always be used in a positive way. If we know what we estimated and we know what things are taking, then we know where to look when things aren't going well, or we just know what to change so that they get better in the future. And so ultimately, what I really want to do is make sure that when you know the score and when the score is in real time in front of people, they for themselves get proactive and they decide what needs to change rather than it always being the leader. And so I think the key thing here is remember, estimated versus actual hours allows people to unlock their true potential. And it's not all about you as the leader. But as a leader, it is your job to set the expectations, to create the systems and the foundational supporting procedures and technology to allow that to happen. And I think people will get better on their own when this metric's clear.
And what those continuous improvement, Mark, what do you think that impact is on bottom line revenue as well?
Yeah, I mean, typically, I think almost instantly, what we've seen over the years at LMN is, 20% increase in productivity, which usually a good portion of that goes to the bottom line. But it's not uncommon to see companies that are only making 2 or 3% profit get into the double-digit profit territory incredibly fast, just because people now know how long they're supposed to be on job sites, whether it's install or maintenance, any recurring work. Just knowing how long they're actually supposed to be there changes everything. And often that, like I said, 20% to even as much as 40% increase in productivity is not uncommon to see. And normally it's just because people are overproducing. They're doing more work than they should on a job site every week because they didn't know how long they were supposed to be there. They're just trying to manage their day on their own, and they're kind of deciding for themselves how long to spend doing various tasks without really knowing what the expectation was when the project or contract was sold.
And continuous improvement on estimating accuracy, have you seen in the past how that's maybe led to winning more jobs or winning the right jobs if someone can hone in their estimating to get like that much more accurate?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, what tends to happen when you get really good at managing estimated versus actual hours is there's some really big takeaways. I think we've got another slide that we could move on to here, but there's some big takeaways where ultimately the estimate was either underbid, we didn't add enough hours for that specific task, or the crew is just, maybe falling a little bit behind. And, we all know this common blame game where we've got the estimator blames the field crew and the field crew blames the estimator when the hours are wrong. But the reality is I think if estimated versus actual hours are being used properly, what you're actually doing is always honing your production rates to make sure that they're accurate. And then using the average production rates of multiple crews, you can kind of hold each crew accountable. So they can't just keep saying, I need more hours, because that's not going to always work. We can't continue to just sell with more hours. And ultimately, when we look at the average of multiple crews, we can set realistic production rates. And if a crew can't reach that goal, then what that tells us it's time for training. So it actually gives us the insight to know when a crew is falling behind on a very specific work area, like maybe they're just not doing well on paver installation. At that point, we can kind of decide whether we just want to use a specialized crew who is really good at that in the future, or maybe we want to subcontract it, or maybe we want to level that crew up with more training so that they can actually start to hit the proper numbers. And so in any case, I think like the numbers that we generate from estimated versus actual just tell us what needs to fix, and it allows us to make a decision to drive an improvement in the future. And that's continuous improvement at its finest.
Yeah, and I think the point that you made earlier around getting that information in real time, one of the points on the slide here, when hours are running hot, fix the problems earlier. I think that's also just like a huge component, because you don't want to wait until the job's over to be able to see those things. You need to be able to react and potentially make changes. Because I know personally, I've seen it or heard it from contractors both ways, where maybe the crew is working on something out of scope by mistake. Maybe they're pruning the wrong tree or whatever the case may be. But I've also obviously heard stories the other way, not trying to make it about the crew, but maybe the estimate was underbid and it needed to be refined. So I think your point earlier too about it being in real time, that's so important.
Yeah, it does. It allows you to be proactive, so you can get out there and really make the decisions on where to get involved. And as a small business owner, it's tough, right? We get out of bed and there's multiple things that need to be fixed every day, and that never ends, by the way. I certainly didn't ever find a day where there wasn't 100 things to make better in my own company. And I think what happens is you start focusing on what you perceive as being the biggest problem instead of what the biggest problem is. And so it's much easier when you can look at data, see where projects are consistently running over, and then start to focus on leveling up the team with better training and better procedures, better equipment, better bids, whatever it happens to be. And then there's a really good point that came up in the notes here, in the chat, sorry. Caitlin Anderson just mentioned, by getting really focused on estimated versus actual and job costing, it also helps you understand like what you're so good at that you should maybe do more of it, right? So you can really start to sell work that's high revenue per hour, work that your company is really good at doing. And then maybe, some other work that you're not always great at, you could consider either not doing, subcontracting, or doing less of it. And so I think it really does create that improvement opportunity on the sales side as well. But thanks for sharing that, Caitlin. That was a great note.
That's a great comment. Yeah. All right. So on this next one, I think this is just a huge point in general that that we like to make, but around attracting and retaining top talent and how high performers need that feedback. They want to know what winning looks like, and you need to be able to show them that, or else you risk losing your high performers and then retaining your maybe lower performers or people that necessarily don't care what the score is, if you will. So this is, I think, one of the biggest impacts, and we're obviously showing a picture of the crew app here where you can see the score, but your high performers just need that transparency, and I think it's such a crucial point that we want to make.
It is, and like this one is, I think, a little bit underestimated. Yes, you'll attract better people when you've got a great company. We know that. That's simple. But when it comes to retaining top talent, I think what happens in a lot of companies is they do get some really great people, but when they don't really know what winning looks like, when they don't really understand how they're performing against a plan, and they don't have any transparency, it just gets exhausting. And I think those really good people leave because they're looking for more. They're looking for success. And so the people, as you pointed out, that end up staying when you don't have a lot of transparency or a lot of measurement are usually the wrong people. And I think what I hear a lot of business owners tell me when they do start using crew and they start really managing estimated versus actual and job costs, they realize that the people that they thought were the best in their company are often nowhere near the best. They really start to realize that often it's kind of the understated quiet worker that is actually getting more work done, and they're actually contributing to profit at a much higher level than the biggest voice in the room that might always be, talking a lot about improvements and talking a lot about productivity, but they're not necessarily always the most productive. And it's not really their fault if you're not measuring, they just don't know. And so I think what happens is everybody gets better and retaining top talent becomes a lot easier because the best people, they succeed for themselves. Because you've probably heard me say this before, I think everybody in the world is an entrepreneur. Everybody gets out of bed and goes to work for themselves. They don't go to work for companies. They just go to work at companies to support themselves. And so I think the best people are looking to understand when they're successful so that they can do more to be more successful. And for that reason, I really do believe that estimated versus actual hours is a game changer in attracting the people that you really want leading your field crews out there in your company.
Yeah, and calling out Caitlin's point again here, but similar to how, as a company, you might find areas that you excel in or niche areas. What this also allows you to do at the individual level, we kind of touched on it before, but you can assign specific crews to specific work where they're going to excel based on real data that you have, and maybe not like a gut feel, to your point.
Yeah, that's such a big point. Know where your strengths are. And as the company evolves, if you're a growing company, in the earlier years in my business, every crew was kind of a jack of all trades type crew. But then over time, as the projects got bigger, and I had more crews, I started to create special teams. We had, crews that just did planting, crews that were doing concrete work and forming, and crews that were doing hardscape like pavers and flagstone, and crews that were doing carpentry. And I think what starts to happen is your special teams emerge because you can see which crew is really most proficient at different types of work. And it's usually the work that they're more passionate about and the work that they enjoy. And so it gets a lot easier to put the right people in the right places. And back to where we started, the best leaders really unlock the true potential of each person and the entire team by knowing that. And yeah, exactly what you just described and what Caitlin was mentioning there in the chat. It just allows you to be the playmaker and to be the leader that you need to be, because what success looks like when you can see it.
Well, hey, that's a great segue into our next slide here. So another question just for the audience. How often do you think you should share the score? So how often, earlier we saw a lot of comments, daily, weekly. Anyone have opinions on how often you should be sharing the score?
Yeah, I'd love to see what comes up in the chat. It looks like we've got a lot of dailies popping in here by the looks of it, which is great. Daily for sure. For me, my answer to this, every morning when the truck starts at your shop, if you're going to go out and do 5 stops with a maintenance crew, or you're going to go work on an install project that may be multi-day or multi-week, every day when the day starts, make sure that everybody knows what the current score is. If you're going to an install, how do we look right now? Talk about it. Talk about it on the drive over to the job site if you're driving together. At the very least, when you get to the job site, stop before you take the tools out. Talk about how things are going on estimated versus actual. Talk about what you want to get done that day, and then pull the tools out. Taking the tools out of the trailer before you've talked about what it is that you're going to do that day is not effective. So the score has to start every day and start every stop on a maintenance crew. while you're driving from one stop to the next, tell everybody, hey, we're going to be at this next place for 1 hour because we have a crew of 3 and it's a 3-hour per week visit. So we've got 1 hour, we're in and out. Here's what we need to get done. And I think when you keep score and you talk about it consistently, it changes everything. It just really does bring that awareness to each individual so that they can contribute, and they do want to. They just need to see the scoreboard.
Yeah, I gotta give this credit to Mike, our CTO. He's got a great analogy that he said to me before, which was, imagine if you're playing golf and you don't find out the score until the end of the game or the end of the round. Probably good for some people, but not good for everyone, right? If you're a competitive person or you're a high performer, you want to know the score. So love that analogy there.
Absolutely, for sure. Mike is a much better golfer than I am, so all right. Yeah, empowering your crews to drive performance. I mean, ultimately, what we want to do is find a way for people to know what success looks like. We want them to be able to self-regulate with their pace so that they can work independently. Like ultimately, everybody just wants a role where they find purpose in the work. They understand what success looks like. They've got a manager that really sets expectations, but then steps away and lets them manage and do the work that they'd like to do it within the allotted time. And I think ultimately what this does is it just creates a much easier conversation day to day between managers and crew leaders, in the sense that they're just talking about reality. Are we doing well right now? Are we not? What do you think we need to do to catch up? What do you think about the production rates that we applied? And when this just becomes a reality or the way it is in your business, then I think what's happened is you've just created a continuous improvement culture. And you've probably heard me say this before. The way it is like my definition of culture. Your culture in your company is just the way it is in your company. And if the way it is that you talk about how things are going and everybody understands what success looks like, and then you're just talking about how to optimize it, then you build trust. And like trust is a pretty foundational item when it comes to continuous improvement, because you can't improve if people don't feel comfortable enough to let you know how things are going. And I think that the trust and the language really develops around estimated versus actual hours. It's kind of that foundational item needed to drive continuous improvement deep into the culture.
Yeah, those are great points, and it really does set the foundation. If you're speaking about it regularly, there's no excuses. It also holds people accountable. Great points there. So this one, yeah, I mean, it's all about letting the data tell the story too, right? So I mean, when you've got the data in your hands, if you're using Crew, hopefully everyone here is on the new Crew app. By the way, if you're an LMN customer, make sure you check that out in the App Store, just as a side note. But when you're using that, the data is available on your dashboards in LMN live in real time, so that you can make those types of decisions that we're talking about. You can see if a job's, getting hot on hours, so that you can make adjustments before it's too late. And there's tons of resources within LMN. The screenshot here is of a scorecard for a job that breaks it out, by task or work area from the estimate. So you can get as granular or as simple as you want with your tracking. But ultimately, like, you'll have the data that you need to make those types of decisions. And without it, if you don't know the score, then you're waiting till the end of the game, the end of that golf round, if you will, to be able to see how you did, and you can't really make any adjustments that way.
Yeah, so true. And I mean, another major problem that I've seen over the years, just in working with so many contractors, oftentimes they say they have job costing in place, but the job costing is on the job as a whole. And that's a big problem, because when you're just putting all the hours from a job to that job, it does tell you the story for the job as a whole. Did we win? but that's not really going to drive any meaningful continuous improvement. And it's certainly not going to allow for that proactive improvement while the job's happening, because you don't really know if you're running over on one work area or the other. And when that happens, you just end up kind of looking at every job as one big bucket. And the worst part is, if you lost money, it might have just been on one very small component of the job that caused the overage. And then what happens is the next time you're bidding jobs, you don't really know what to fix. And so you can't ever really drive the improvement on production rates so that your estimating gets better. And you can't really drive improvement on crew training because you're not even really sure where they went over. And so the nice part about this report is it allows us to just dive in and look at the job site and each work area. And then we can look at who did that work area and what the gaps were that we need to fill in terms of like training or, even updating estimating.
Great points. And just a couple of tips here on the slide. If you are an Element customer, try out the job cost analysis in the analytics dashboards there. And also there's the Foreman Daily Review. It's a report in our payroll reports that doesn't get noticed as much as it should, but it's such a great report. Gives your crews a score on how they're doing on all their visits. Great communication piece to help you have these conversations. So just wanted to shout out some of those.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so, major outcome here. This one is, I think, everybody's favorite part of really getting sharp on hours. And I think the reason that it's everybody's favorite is this leads to two big outcomes. Ultimately, more revenue for the company, which leads to higher wages for the staff and better bottom line profits for the company owners. And so ultimately, this is like a win for everyone. I think the customers end up getting much better, the consumers of landscaping end up getting much better service because people understand how long they have to be there. And therefore, I think a lot of times they spend the appropriate amount of time and they do the right things on the job because they're more clear. But, as I said, with this added revenue, we can pay our staff more money and we can earn more profit, which allows us to reinvest in the business and continue to improve other things that just add to that flywheel effect. And so, maybe you want to share what the crew score is on the new app here, Jason, so people understand why we added that and how that sort of bolsters what we have traditionally shared with estimated versus actual hours.
Yeah, so really simply with the new crew score functionality in the crew app, you're comparing productive time that you're charging clients for versus unproductive time. So for example, time maybe that you might not be charging if you're in maintenance, for example, and windshield time, or you're at the shop if that's not included in your bids. It just goes to kind of compare how much time is productive that you're being paid for and billing versus that unproductive time, and puts it in an easy to understand score for your crews that you can help to drive efficiency and maximizing your revenue, like Mark just mentioned there. So really easy to set up. You can do that in the staff section if you're an Element customer. Again, just set the goal, and we've got some best practices here from Mark as far as kind of giving you an idea of what maybe those percentages should be.
Yeah, I mean, it's every company is going to have some unbilled time. We have to load and unload our trucks in the morning and in the evening to some extent. We want to minimize that with crew trailers so that we don't waste hours loading and unloading tools endlessly. But needless to say, we got to drive to job sites. We've got to put some things on and off the truck each day. We've got to keep our trucks clean. So there's going to be some unbilled time. And with Element, we really try to teach people to factor that into the billable rates so that we're always charging our customers for this downtime. But regardless of the fact that we recover it, we still want to minimize it and maximize our billable time. And so the crew score really does just allow the crews to understand for themselves what their unbilled time is in real time. So every day at the end of the day, they know if they were 85% billable or if they were 75% billable. And we can really help them understand what that should look like. And again, that's the leader's job. And the crew app is just kind of automating this for the crews so that they don't have to ask, and it's automating it for the leaders so they don't have to try to communicate more information. As we all know, there's not enough time in the day to possibly share that kind of information with each crew. So we've just automated it with the crew score so they know for themselves.
Yeah, I think if you're just getting into this and you're not really sure what that score should be, do check out in your price list what you're setting as your unbillable percentage, because that can kind of give you your bare minimum, since that's what you're trying to recover on those estimates. So if you're looking for that starting point, not sure how to set it yet with the data that you have, check that. It's a good way to kind of benchmark a starting point as a minimum. Like Mark mentioned, though, obviously you can strive for higher than that. So I think we're
out of time, and we keep running over every week. I think we're
doing pretty good.
Close. We stayed on time this week. So definitely want to make sure that we take a quick minute here to invite everybody to the upcoming summit in Orlando. We've got an incredible lineup of speakers, literally my favorite people from this industry sharing their stories. There's just so many incredible stories. It's hard to fit it all in day to day, week to week. This summit is all about just packing this into 3 days so that you really do get an opportunity to sit down and listen to amazing landscape business owners explain exactly what made all the difference in their career. And so this is your opportunity, I think, to get 500 years of experience delivered over 3 days. If you don't leave this event with the ideas that are going to drive revenue growth, people growth, and profit growth, I'm personally guaranteeing that you'll leave with that level of knowledge. And I guarantee that the time and money invested will give you a much bigger return this year just from hearing from these people. I can't say enough about the lineup that we've got this year. We're going to have over 20 main stage sessions. We're going to have a huge group of LMN staff there to work one-on-one with our customers. And ultimately, we're going to create lots of opportunities for peer networking with roundtable discussions, panel discussions, and the main stage sessions. And if you haven't heard, we've got an incredible new awards program. So we've got 8 big awards this year, all of which come with some pretty unbelievable prizes. I think industry awards, at least in the landscape industry, have always been have sort of come with a plaque. We're putting some money up. These awards are $20,000 vacations. So we really want our customers to be celebrating the success that they've had in the business. And we've put the awards program together in a way that we can truly be proud of it. And our customers can truly celebrate the successes that they've had in their business. So we're very excited about this event. I hope you can make it down. I hope you bring your team. The companies that I've seen show up to these annual summits and various training programs that we put on, those that bring their team always move the needle faster. What you're doing when you bring your team to this event is you're creating a common language in your company. When you come up to these events by yourself, you leave by yourself and you have to try to drive everything that you learned into your organization by yourself. And I think that creates a pretty lonely place for a leader. When you take your staff with you and you join us for training and you hear from all of these other incredible people, you change the business at a much, much faster pace. And I can tell you, as I said, the return on investment that you'll get from making the investment, it's going to pay back super fast this year in 24. So hopefully you guys can make it down. There's a 20% off admission with this code. So just for joining us here, you're going to get that discount. So go ahead and hit that. We're at a beautiful resort in Orlando. Lots of great things to do. We'll have golf on Friday and Saturday for anybody that wants to play. And certainly look forward to seeing you all there. But
And we'll keep score too.
we'll keep score. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Mike will keep score.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining this week. I really appreciate you joining us each week here on the Mastermind series. It certainly puts the fuel in our tank. So thanks for being here, and make it a great day.
Thanks, everyone.